start measuring. If you're doing offline marketing, start measuring and have a feedback loop in.
You're listening to the Keep Optimizing podcast to increase your traffic, improve your conversion rates, and grow your profits.
Hello and welcome. I'm Chloe Thomas, the host of this e-commerce marketing focused podcast. If you're not familiar, well, our format is that each month we focus on a different marketing method like email or SEO or Facebook ads. And each week I interview a different expert to explore the latest advice on making it work for you. This month we're tackling offline marketing. Yeah, all that stuff that happens offline. We've talked a lot about what marketing to do and how to make it perform well, and we've talked a tiny bit about how to track the results, which is super important if you want to understand how your offline marketing is driving you those e-commerce sales and profits that you're looking for. But there are tried and tested ways to get all that tracking done. And in this episode, we're going to be exploring how to go about tracking your offline marketing activity, including a really cool definition of the different types of offline marketing when it comes to tracking. And we're going to be looking at that thorny subject of attribution. What is working now in the attribution space? How can you go about getting the right understanding of how your marketing is or is not performing for you? So do make sure you listen right to the end of the episode, because at the end, my guest will be sharing her quickfire insider tips to help you maximize the performance of your offline marketing. And I'll be sharing my take on it all and outlining a couple of other free ways we can help you to improve your offline marketing even more. So stay tuned to the end. Have you yet downloaded our ebook? To celebrate Keep Optimizing's sister show, eCommerce Master Plan, reaching episode 500, yeah, it's been around that long, we've created an epic e-commerce success-focused ebook. It's packed with 500 top tips about how to make your e-commerce store more profitable. And I've personally organised the whole thing into sections so you can dip in and dip out and take inspiration as and when you need it. This ebook needs to be sat on your desktop. Download your free copy right now at keepopt.com/ebook. Get 2024's most valuable e-commerce ebook now, keepopt.com/ebook. In this episode, I'm chatting with offline marketing expert Jo Young. Jo is the managing director at UniFida, a team of data-driven marketing experts with a focus on attribution, especially matching up offline and online marketing. Jo's been at the forefront of marketing data analysis since 1995, which is even longer than I've been in e-commerce. So we really have an expert with us today. Hello, Jo.
Hi, Chloe. Good to be here. And thank you for inviting me.
It's great to have you back on the show again. How have things been in the world of offline and attribution since we last caught up?
Well, since we last caught up, I think that things are finally coming together and people are starting to realise that the measurement silos that we've been having over the past few years with various things popping up and need to be bunched together and everything needs to be measured. So we've been really busy helping our clients to measure. And I almost feel like my many years in this in this area and seeing attribution and all direct marketing and all these things coming together has finally got to the point where we're talking to clients about all of those things together.
Yeah, not that I'm anywhere near as deep in the world of attribution as you are, but it's been a fascinating few years in attribution. And we were just saying before we hit the record button that it's like all the chaos is now finally drilling down into what are becoming tried and tested ways for making all of this work. And it's great to have you here today to help us through all of that. So let's start by defining offline. And I realise we've got to episode 4 of our offline marketing before we've really defined offline. But Jo, when you're helping people with all of this, what are you classing as an offline channel?
Yes. So offline marketing, we find it's easy just to say something that doesn't involve the internet. So direct mail would be offline, door drops. And we also like to distinguish between direct and indirect offline. So, for example, indirect offline could be something like press or outdoor or TV. And then direct offline is something like direct mail or your door drops that we discussed earlier. So indirect and direct offline.
Got you. So something where we're pretty confident about which human or which house received it, we count as direct. and then everything else from TV to radio to print ads is going to be indirect. And why is it important to define those separately and treat those separately?
The reason it's important is because from the data perspective, so with direct offline, you can generally track the progress of that marketing to that individual, whereas with indirect, you're not entirely sure whether somebody has seen an ad or not. So with door drops, you know that this pack definitely went to that household, or this direct mail envelope definitely went to that individual, as far as, within reason. Whereas with TV and outdoor and radio, we can't directly say that that individual definitely saw that ad. So it's from a data perspective, particularly if you're trying to do something like attribution, and I'm sure we'll get onto that later, where you're saying, where did this sale come from? Did it come from a bit of PPC, an email, direct mail? We can't absolutely say for certain it came from outdoor.
Got you. So we're talking about, if it's direct, we can match it back to postcodes and things like that. Is that what we're saying here?
That's right. Yes.
Right. So we're going all the way back to the actual customer records to do the tracking.
We are, which is important, actually, which we'll talk about in a moment, because you don't know whether you're bringing in new customers or existing customers with the marketing you're doing, which, as we know, that has quite different economics around it. If you already know that person, the advertising that you were doing at that time, was it designed to bringing existing customers, or actually when you're doing that advertising, really the aim is to bring in new? And if you don't know whether you're bringing in new or existing, then that's a level of understanding that actually we should have as marketers, because we are doing this different activity to influence different types of customers.
Got it. So when it comes to the direct side of offline, we've got the kind of the ultimate tracking mechanism, which is the addresses, those good old postal addresses, essentially. Are there any other tracking mechanisms you advise people to use as well? I know a lot of people historically certainly used voucher codes. We hear about people using QR codes. Is that the sort of thing people should be doing as well? Any other good tracking tips for those direct items?
Yes, and when clients are still using different telephone numbers, traditional, you phone this number, we know you got that number from a certain creative or a certain type of marketing. So yes, the more that you can do to track where that came from, obviously the better it is. We need to just start measuring something, and nothing's perfect. But yes, if we can start to do that, if the call centre are asking, where did you hear about us, or what made you call today? Even on websites, you'll see what persuaded you to buy. How did you hear about us? What marketing affected your decision today? So anything that we can do to match that marketing up with that particular purchase, that goes a long way to understanding what's working and what isn't. It's not perfect, but there are ways of then increasing the accuracy of that. There are different techniques, but you've just got to start somewhere. So
kind of track as much as possible without rendering the mailing piece a QR code nightmare, basically, we're saying.
Yes, exactly. And we're going right back to, you talk about name and address, but obviously if you're talking about the whole journey of that particular purchase, it might involve digital, it might involve, although we're talking about offline marketing here, there are very few journeys that are purely offline. I was talking to a client this morning and we were talking about a cold mailing that was going through, but from what our tracking we could see, they received the cold mailing, but then they went straight onto the website and had a look around. That matching also adds more insight into it, because if they had clicked through on a PPC ad, then your digital team might be claiming that particular sale, but we know that came originally from a cold mailing.
We are definitely going to get into all that complexity very shortly. But first, I just want to check, is there any type of tracking we should be using for our indirect offline marketing over and above what we've already talked about? Obviously, we can't take it down to address level because we don't get that from TV, radio, etc. Is it just a case of good URLs, voucher codes, QR codes, different phone numbers like you were saying earlier, or is there anything else we can do with those?
Yeah, so that is obviously a really good discipline, is to try and put tracking mechanisms within those. The traditional way of measuring TV advertising and radio and press goes back all the way back to the 1950s and 60s with a technique called econometrics, which is a modelling technique. And those who have got a huge portion of their budget in offline marketing will most certainly be doing econometrics modeling. And to explain what that is looking at sales over time, so a time series of sales. And if you know what was happening along that period of time, we can find the relationship between those sales and what was happening. So if you're spending TV over that period of time, we can see what happens to the sales line. It's a bit more complicated than that because it also takes into account things like weather, the economy, other external factors, what your competitors are doing. So it's quite a complex model, but it's quite a traditional method of saying when we did do TV, we got this many sales in, regardless of everything else that was going on, or when we did radio or when we did press. So that's a much more complicated way of doing it, but it's quite a well-established way. And what that also allows you to do is to model the longer-term effects of offline marketing, so the brand effect. Because it's looking at sales over time, you would expect a good model to be able to tell you this was the immediate effect of the advertising, but this is the long-term brand equity that we've built up as a result of that.
Got you. And is that something you can tie back to customer, or is that more of a headline, we spent X on TV advertising and the econometrics model tells us we made this?
That's a very, very good question. And that's what I've been doing over the years, is to try and mix these techniques together so that we can actually start to understand how the offline marketing is affecting at least types of customers. So a new versus existing split is really important in any model. So if you're doing that type of measurement, to just understand what happened to sales with TV is useful. But if you were aiming your TV at bringing in new customers, then you should be able to split it by that. And if you can split it by that, why can't you split it by customers that live in this certain area or these high value customers? So there is much more of an emphasis on bringing that down as much as possible into a customer focus as opposed to a channel focus.
Yeah, because it's that thing, isn't it? It's like we're in this world of profit-focused marketing rather than just sales-focused marketing. Yeah, it's great it brought in the money, but did it bring in money from the people we wanted it to is, of course, the important bit. And then I think that brings us in quite nicely to the thorny question of attribution, because all those tracking methods we've been talking about, they're going to give you a result per channel. But as you were outlining, Jay, a lot of the customers will have had multiple touch points. They may have done a load of stuff on the website and then come back another day from another channel. We are also advocating tracking one marketing piece in multiple ways with the phone numbers, QR codes, URLs, and the address tracking we were talking, and the econometric. So how on earth do we try and work out which bits of our marketing have been most valuable? How do we try and make sense of this huge amount of data that's now coming at us? It almost feels like since all those privacy changes have happened and we've lost some data, we almost have even more to try and make sense of now. So huge question, Joe, but how do we start making sense of it all?
So a measurement has got particularly complex, without a doubt. I think if you are breaking down silos, then you are doing a good job. If you're starting to join techniques together, you are starting to get more accurate. So to put that in perspective, in if you're doing a direct mail campaign, the traditional way would be to look before and after that campaign, and did you get any uplift or not? If we brought in the digital side of that, we might say, well, yes, there was an uplift, but what else was instrumental in that particular journey? So did they click on PPC and digital? And that's where we get into combining not just attribution using digital, which GA does. It tends to say, okay, they went PPC search and that's what GA will give you. No, actually, I want to put in my direct marketing into that as well, some of my direct offline channels into that, because I want to understand, was it just PPC or did I send them a mailing? And then, were they also getting a door drop? So we're combining two techniques, and then the final piece in the puzzle which is what we do as well, is from your measurement of TV and press and the other things that are going on offline, combine that in as well. So we can't just say that that sale came from direct mail and pay-per-click. We know that we had a TV ad going out at the same time. It is quite complex, but it's step by step, so you've got all your digital measured together. Let's put in the direct into that. So we've got what is now considered best practice in attribution, which is to join together your direct marketing and your digitals, but using first party data, and then layer on top of that your TV and your radio. So it's step by step by step getting to something that then you can present in front of the board and the finance director and say, this is my marketing spend, this is what it brought back. There's no double counting, and we can split it between new and existing, and it's all being done on the same basis. Whereas if you look at reports at the moment, a GA report won't necessarily have the direct marketing in it. The direct marketing report won't necessarily have the digital influences, and both of them won't have the TV and the radio. So the closer that you can get them together and cut down those silos, I think the nearer we're getting to fully understanding where the marketing budget is working and where it's not.
So it strikes me, Jo, that basically what we're trying to do is pull together as much data as possible, whatever sources it's coming from, in order to then create a big repository of data so that we can run some kind of algorithm, some kind of tech through it to help us evolve the right way to assess all these different actions that the customer can take. So is it possible for an in-house team, to do this without some brilliant software, as a first question?
You do need software. You will need software to collect that first party data, and you will need a marketing database with your individuals in it, and you will need a way of joining those together. It's not as complex as some of the big hardware solutions would necessarily make it out to be. We know it is done in-house, and it is done with relatively cost-effective software. So yes, you do need that, but I think some of it is also to do with actually having the will of the company to want to be able to look at it in this way, because you could have the best tech in the world, but if the marketing teams and the board don't buy into it, it's going to be very hard to do it, because it's going to come up with results that you haven't seen before. There are going to be different points of view. Your call centre might have put 10 sales down to TV using their source code, but actually when you look at the journey, you might say, well, really, you should only have got 7 of those. Or particularly maybe for a cold mailing, no, those 10 weren't even mailed. So I don't know why you've put them down to that. So you will get different results, but it's coming up with the best answer. And we're not, we are talking about decision support here, pragmatic ways of measuring. But the important thing is to measure and to start that journey and to work together to come to an agreement that actually this is the best view of our marketing budget that we've got at the moment. We know it can be improved. Let's put steps in place to improve it, but let's start. And let's agree that we shouldn't be looking at it in silos. We should be joining it together and understanding how our different activities are working together. I mean, integrated marketing is not a new thing, so integrated measurement shouldn't be.
It's interesting you immediately bring in the team bit. Like, I ask a question that's quite about the tech and you're immediately there going, no, it's the team, which is exactly how it, the key thing. You can have the best tech in the world, but if the team aren't behind it, especially when it's tech which is making kind of so many decisions for you, influenced by what you're telling it, you've got to be ready to evolve it and see it as a journey, like you're saying. On that kind of journey piece, a couple of years in, is it likely that everyone's going to have a similar approach to how they deal with Facebook-driven traffic versus how they're driven with offline? Or does it really become very much a company-specific set of rules that are driving these clever algorithms that work the numbers out for us?
We see similarities in the way that Facebook works, for example, but it does depend on the company and how they're using. We know that Facebook is obviously used a lot for lead generation, and we also know and expect that lead generation is going to have diminishing returns. So There are similarities, but it does vary in the way that it's doing it, and also the way that it's being tracked. If we're talking about first-party data, it's really important that when that Facebook click comes through to the website, that you can actually identify where that came from. So some of the tagging needs to be in place properly. When you're doing your Facebook lead gen, making sure that you don't go to people that you know already. So how you set that up and how it works is really important, and that obviously impacts how you're then going to measure it.
I'm going to take a rough guess. The answer to this one's going to be yes, but bear with me whilst I ask you the question, Jo. I remember back when I ran catalogue mailings, for example, we made the decision that all the photography cost and the copywriting cost would be put against the house mailings, but not against the cold mailings. So we were kind of almost giving a better chance to our cold activity by putting a lot of that overhead cost, as it were, of a catalogue towards that, which I think fits in exactly, it's a good example of what you were just saying around each company might play with these things slightly differently. But it brings to mind for me the fact of, is there any point in doing this work if you're not going to add the cost element into it? How much it's cost across the channels to get the customers, how much each of these channels is costing you, and feeding that into the model? Is it worth doing it if you can't put the costings in there?
That's a big question, isn't it? I mean, I think you have to put the costs in, really. I mean, it all comes down to your objectives. Some marketing teams are just getting leads in, and it doesn't necessarily matter about the cost. But I think that's becoming rarer and rarer. I think we are much more focused on costs than we used to be generally within marketing teams. So I think, yes, we do need to put them in. It depends on your objectives. Again, that's another team thing, isn't it? What do you include, what you don't include? And then we're getting on to the topic of return on investment. And are we looking at the longer term view or just that particular sale? And these are all quite often conversations that we're having, particularly with something like cold list mailings that can be seen as quite expensive. But if they're bringing in people that you really wouldn't have been able to get any other way, and although the first purchase doesn't make the stats look that great, if you consider the long-term value or even the 2-year value, that looks better. So yes, costs, think about the return on investment piece, but I think, again, separating it between the new and existing and comparing like with like across the channels.
Yeah, and I think that time point you make there is so crucial as well. Last time we caught up, though, Jo, you were just launching a new carbon counting, not just a cash counting, but a carbon counting element. I really hope your customers are embracing it and are really loving that you've got that functionality. Has it been proving popular and insightful?
It is proving very popular. I think sustainability is certainly something that is on everybody's minds, or certainly a lot more than it used to be. But what I think is now changing is that I think people are realising that if you are keeping an eye on the sustainability and the CO2 cost of your marketing, then that's a win-win, because if you're wasting carbon, the chances are that you're wasting budget as well. And I think now it's starting to finally, sort of come home. But again, it's an organisation team thing. You have to all work on this. It has to come from the top, isn't it? Because we might make a decision about the length of an ad or the quality of a pack, and change it because of its sustainability, and hoping that obviously it performs as well, if not better. But those decisions need to have the backing of the board and of your marketing director.
Thanks, Jo, so much. It's been awesome getting to pick your brains about offline marketing attribution and so much more in attribution as well. Listeners, make sure you stay tuned right to the end so you don't miss out on Jo's insider tips on offline marketing and my suggestions for more free resources to help you improve things even further. Have you yet downloaded our ebook? To celebrate Keep Optimizing's sister show, eCommerce Master Plan, reaching episode 500, yeah, it's been around that long, we've created an epic e-commerce success-focused ebook. It's packed with 500 top tips about how to make your e-commerce store more profitable. and I've personally organised the whole thing into sections so you can dip in and dip out and take inspiration as and when you need it. This ebook needs to be sat on your desktop. Download your free copy right now at keepopt.com/ebook. Get 2024's most valuable e-commerce ebook now, keepopt.com/ebook. Okay, Joe, so far we've gone deep into offline marketing attribution. Now you get to wow us with your insider knowledge about the whole of offline marketing and beyond. So for the following questions, your answer can be anything to do with e-commerce, which of course does include everything we've already been talking about. Joe, are you ready for these?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's start with newbie advice. If we've inspired someone to take their first step, what do they need to know to give themselves the best chance of success?
Start measuring. If you're doing offline marketing, start measuring and have a feedback loop in. The effort should be proportional. So if offline marketing is a relatively small part of your budget, then obviously the effort that you will go in to measure it will be smaller. If it's a large part, then go big and think about the more sophisticated methods of doing it.
Brilliant. Yeah, just start measuring, everyone. Then at least you've got something you can start making sense of. Now, once you've started, of course, you've got to keep optimizing. So what's your favourite way to improve performance?
Start moving away from the channel focus to the customer focus. Is your measurement bringing in the audience that you want it to and expected it to, and look at its interaction with other channels. So we're starting to be a bit more intelligent about the measurement, and we're not overcounting, we're getting more accurate. If you're trying a new technique, parallel run it with what you're doing at the moment.
Love that. Customer groups, not channel groups, everybody. If someone listening wants to learn more, is there one cheap or free resource you would recommend?
Yes, please visit the UniFida website on unifida.co.uk, because we've got frequently asked questions about attribution there. We have blogs, we've even got a video on attribution, and we are bringing out an ebook on the value of marketing, which will explain how to go about measuring your offline marketing better.
Awesome. So everyone, that is unifida.co.uk, and we'll make sure there's a link to that in the show notes for all of you as well. Well worth getting your hands on that ebook. Finally, Joe, it's crystal ball time. What's coming up in the next 6 to 12 months that we should be getting ready for?
Yes, I think there's 3 things. It's the first party data and being able to do direct offline measurement, the resurgence of econometrics, the technique that I spoke about earlier, and finally, yes, the sustainability in marketing. I think those 3 things are going to really sort of take off over the next 6 to 12 months.
Love that. Short and to the point. Put those on your to-do list, everybody, because they are so important things you need to get your heads around at the moment. Joe, it's been awesome chatting to you. We are very nearly at the end of the show, though, so could you please let the listeners know where they can find you and your business?
Yes. The website, unifida.co.uk, and also LinkedIn, please. So Joe Young, and connect with me on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. Joe, it has been brilliant chatting to you. Well, you've given us all so much to think about our attribution journeys. So thanks so much for being here on the show again.
Thank you very much, Chloe.
So much to think about there from Joe's session. And I think, although we didn't talk about it a lot, I think one of the biggest things from that is you've got to have organisational buy-in to any new models of attribution. If you're moving away from what Google tells us, what Facebook tells us, what we're seeing per channel, to taking a more comprehensive viewpoint, starting to understand those touch points, starting to work out how it's affecting different cohorts of users, starting to build a working model with new software, whether it's with UniFida or whether it's with another team, a software program even, you've got to have that buy-in throughout the business. One, because it affects everybody's results, from the customer service results to the warehouse team, to the marketing team, the shops team, to everybody gets affected by this decision. So they've got to be on board and seeing it as a good thing for everything. And you've got to have the board caring about it, otherwise they're just not going to believe anything you're presenting them with. So make sure you've got that buy-in. And then the tech and the algorithms are getting so much better, and the experts are getting so much better at helping us through this now. It has evolved so much in the last few years. It's a lot easier to solve these problems than it was even 5 years ago. You can get the links to everything we discussed, the full transcript of this episode, important notes and more at keepoptimizing.com. Or you can use our special direct to episode short links, go right to the correct page of the website by putting keepopt.com/the number of this episode into the URL bar, and you'll go straight to the correct page. When you get to the website, you can also add yourself to our email list so you don't miss out on any of the other things I share to help you improve your business. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Keep Optimizing podcast. If this has got your attribution juices flowing, then go to keepopt.com/attribution, where you will find all the other episodes where we have tackled this tricky little subject. That's keepopt.com/attribution. And if you want to know a bit more about the offline marketing you could be doing, then scroll back up your feed. We've just done 3 episodes before this one, and we've got another one coming up in this series. And if you go further back up your feed, look out for the word offline, and you'll find out more options you could be using. Or you can go to keepopt.com/offline to find all of those too. And we will be doing a more attribution deep dives later this year. So make sure you're subscribed and following us wherever you get your podcast or to our email list so you don't miss out on that. And please do tell your fellow marketers about the show, because I want to help as many marketers as possible to improve the performance of their e-commerce marketing and their understanding of that performance too. Have a great week, and make sure you listen to the next episode so I can help you to keep optimizing your marketing.
Access everything Keep Optimizing at keepoptimizing.com. That's with an S, not a Z.
It's time to download the 500 top tips to make your e-commerce business more profitable ebook. Go to keepopt.com/ebook now.